This is Washington Times Front Page for Wednesday, December 28th, 2022. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. The Supreme Court has ordered the Biden administration to keep the Title 42 pandemic border expulsion policy in place while it prepares to hear a legal challenge to the policy. Stephen Dinan reports the policy will now remain in place at least into February, when oral arguments are scheduled in the case. It likely will last even longer, as the court then works to formulate its final ruling in the case. The Trump-era policy allows authorities to quickly expel illegal border crossers to stop the spread of COVID-19. The Biden administration kept it in place initially, then more recently has fought to revoke it. Immigrant rights advocates say the expulsions deny legitimate asylum seekers a chance to make their claims, leaving them to abuse either in Mexico or back in their home countries. Top officials at the Pentagon insist they've seen no impact from social policies inside the military. But public confidence in the military has plunged in recent years, with a Ronald Reagan Institute survey showing that 50% of Americans cite those practices as one of the main reasons for their diminished opinion about the armed forces. Those dueling worldviews will be thrust into the spotlight when Republicans take control of the House in January, Ben Wolfgang reports. Key GOP figures are set to zero in on the apparent gulf between the priorities of Pentagon brass and the experiences of those in the rank and file. Pentagon officials argue a diverse military better reflects a diverse country, and in the end improves military effectiveness. They say that rooting out extremism, promoting equality, and creating a culture of inclusiveness makes the military a better fighting force. Wall Street investment firms reject the criticism that they side with Democratic-leaning environmental politics over their fiduciary responsibility. But Ramsey Touchberry reports they've been forced to go on defense as Republican-led states withdraw investments to protest environmental, social, and governance corporate investment strategies. Vanguard Group recently exited the world's largest climate finance alliance, known as the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. Its exit allowed company executives to be excused from a recent questioning of financial firms by the Texas legislature as part of its probe into ESG. West Virginia and 7 other Republican-led states have cumulatively divested nearly $4.3 billion in public funds from BlackRock alone this year, according to an analysis by Ramsey. It may seem like a small number for a company with some $8 trillion in assets under management, but BlackRock executives have increasingly pushed back as other investment corporations have begun to retreat. You can read all of these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find our entire lineup of Washington Times podcasts at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. A difference in voting power is built into the Senate, where Delaware's roughly 700,000 potentially eligible voters get as much say as California's 26 million. But the House is different, with 435 districts giving voters a more intimate chance at selecting their representatives. In some districts, Stephen Dinan reports, non-citizens can impact a district's population without having the right to vote. The distortion plays out in a couple of ways. The first is in apportionment, where states with more immigrants are allocated more seats in the House. The second is in drawing districts within a state, where adult citizens who live in immigrant-rich areas end up with more political power than those that don't. An option to equalize power would be to make citizenship easier to obtain, enticing some non-citizens to sign up. Another would be to let non-citizens vote. Federal law currently prohibits that for federal elections, but some cities are increasingly experimenting with it for local contests. And finally, Guinness has been in the business of tracking world records since 1955 and will confirm this year's collection of superlatives sometime after New Year's Day. Sean Salai reports Guinness says it screened 65,000 applications last year from those seeking to make their marks. The annual collection, known in the U.S. as the Guinness Book of World Records, is on track to add several unusual marks this year, such as Diana Armstrong of Minnesota, whose 42-foot, 10.4-inch fingernails are longer than the average school bus. The reference book receives about 1,000 submissions a week from people looking to establish new records for human achievement and the extremes of the natural world. It can take a year or two for editors to confirm a claim as valid due to the volume of applications. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.